Howdy ho, good neighbor. Today we're flying early in the morning. That's right. We're taking off from the usual spot. The landing pad's on the ground and we're headed up high above Alameda / Oakland, California. And this is Memorial Day weekend. That's right. Like I said, I had the day off, so I would see if they're going to be working on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. So the bay fog, that's what we usually wake up to around here every morning, with that nice bay fog that keeps us nice and cool, and it burns off around 10 a.m., 11. But today it was dry enough to see if they're working, and here is your answer. That's right. They did not have the day off. This place is in full swing. They got all hands on deck, as they say, and as you can see, as I pan this camera around as I usually do, to give the great reveal of just how much of this massive glass recycling plant is left. Wow. Look at that. You can see they started with a little center hole, and now, like I always say, they're eating that elephant one bite at a time. You get to a job like that and you go, how are we going to do this? But we do it one bite at a time. So that's the way I think about it. Whenever I get a big job, I don't look at the big job perspective. I look about how I can just take a little bite at a time. And then after a little while, you got a big bite. And all of a sudden, look at that bite. Boy, you guys have really took a big bite out of that building, I would say. That's the good thing about doing construction, is at the end of the day, you usually have something to show for what you did that day. So hopefully these guys that are working on this job will be able to see this video and see how awesome of a job they're doing. Like I said, it was morning time, so I thought I could get there before the misters were on, and I sure did. The misters weren't blowing so bad on me, so this was a good thing. But they did have the misters on, so they were following the laws. You can see underneath that building there's a big hole in the ground they still got to get into. So their misters have been doing a good job, because there's a lot of water under that building. So they got to be careful not to get their tractors stuck, I would imagine. There's the old pincher. The pincher wasn't doing anything right now. His job was just sitting there. But this guy was definitely moving his piles around. And like I've said before in these videos, they have to move their piles around to get work done. They can't just start tearing stuff down willy-nilly. They have to take a little bite at a time. Now that box really caught my eye, and the green color of that box. So if you worked at this plant, you might have walked past that file cabinet or whatever that green box is. But I noticed that green color is throughout this building. So, yeah, they used some weird colors back in the day, that's for sure. Well, on this day, I definitely wanted to see something big and exciting. And to tell you the truth, everything's exciting, but nothing's big. And you can see that nothing is coming down in one big piece. I know for a fact that when I lose connection, you will see my drone go all the way up in the air like this. Well, there it is, the whole flotilla of heavy moving equipment. Yeah, that's right. They got magnets, and that thing is gruesome looking. It just cuts my hands just looking at it. Look at that. So there you go. You never, ever forget those down shots if you're a drone operator, and sometimes I do. I forget how dramatic those straight down shots really are. You catch yourself just driving with your drone camera right in front of you because you don't want to crash into anything, so you don't want to make any mistakes. So that's why you have those sensors, but boy, you don't want to take your life into granite, or your life into your hands and have your drone fall into granite. Maybe I should say that. Well, I am curious of what is underneath that building, and if they find any hidden treasures. I don't know. But the lower I get, you can see the scale and dimension of how tall that thing is. I sure would like to go on that job site and walk around, but I think they probably have rules and laws and regulations for people like me wandering a dangerous place like that, I would imagine. But there you go. Memorial Day weekend, Friday morning, and they're working. There must be some kind of deadline on this, I would imagine, because Amazon is rumored to be putting a warehouse here. That's right, Amazon Distribution Center. So if that's true, you know that there's a deadline to get this torn down. So there's no 4-day Memorial Day weekends for these guys. And I would be curious if they would have to be off Memorial Day. I don't think they would. Now, here is a question. Should I go down there and drone this with no activity? I know things aren't the best when you don't have any action of the heavy equipment, but I tell you what, it might be neat to take the drone down there when there is nobody there and get it down real low. So stay tuned for one of those videos, because yeah, I could probably get the drone down real low now that there's holes in that building, and I could get my signal through there. So you never know, you never know. So there you go. There's that mister that I was talking about. See how I was able to go down low down here because the mister wasn't blowing down here. So that was very nice on this morning. So you might be getting bored of these glass plant video series adventures, but I tell you what, I can't get bored of that. How could you get bored of seeing history come crumbling down one piece at a time? And boy, do you not realize how fast it comes down until you see it a day or two later. The great thing about this project is you can see it off the freeway, so usually the freeway actually slows down because the traffic, it's just catches your eye going, what is going on that side of the freeway? And the bigger that hole gets, well, the slower the traffic gets because, yeah, you have looky-loos. You've always had looky-loos. And I don't know where that term came from, but I know that it is something that is prevalent throughout the world. People stop and look. And boy, how could you not stop and look at this massive building being torn down? Especially with this drone's eye view. That's right, you used to have bird's eye view. Well, not anymore. You have the drone's eye view. And the secret to this drone's eye view, believe it or not, is smooth, slow movements. That's right. You think you just spin that drone around anywhere you want, but you gotta really move slow. Well, look at that. That is called dust control at its finest. That's right. This man's job is to, or woman, has a full-time job, 8 hours a day, possibly more, of just squirting water onto the ground. Now, I know in California we have a water shortage, but sometimes I wonder if that is just a big conspiracy. Well, I'll tell you the truth. I know water is one of God's miracles, and God has gave us so many miracles, but I'll tell you what, the water and the sun, we could not live without. So I really do not like any kind of waste of water. And believe it or not, in the fire sprinkler trade, we waste gallons and gallons of water each day. It's an untold secret that fresh water goes into fire sprinklers and dirty water comes out. So just imagine all the water being wasted in factories and sinks and fire hydrants, flushes. All right, enough about the water. Well, there's that old tank on the end of this building. They have yet to touch it. I don't know what's going on with that tank, but they do not want to touch it. I don't know if it's full of chemicals or asbestos, but they've stayed plumb away from that tank for some reason. And this is what they're going to get to. This will probably be the day after Memorial Day. All this is coming down. And you can see that there is a lot of debris in there, not just metal. It's concrete, metal, rebar, just nothing's easy. It would be nice if that whole building there was just metal, but you can see that there's concrete floors falling down with file boxes and other debris in there. Yes, it is a delicate process, and those guys have to have good eyes to pick out what metal goes where. So you can see this guy has a couple different piles. Big scrap and little scrap, I do imagine. So I wonder if he ever gets tired of just looking, because you can never just grab and pull, because look at your safety is at risk. All that could come tumbling down if you pull on the wrong stick of metal. It's just all intertwined at a certain point, because when something crashes down, well, it is a spider web of metal. Well, there's the whole crew on this day, or should I say this morning. That's right. This was probably, I want to say 8 o'clock in the morning. I got there a little before 8 thinking they weren't going to start making noise until 8, but nope. They were already down in that hole at before 8, so they must start earlier than 8. Which makes sense. 7 to 3:30 is construction hours, but I didn't think they could make noise until 8. Well, this is one of those points in the video where I just lost signal with my drone. So what do? You pull up until you get your signal back, and you make a pretty little shot. Well, this is that neighborhood that has been riddled with dust and complaints, and they've been having a big homeless problem, but for some reason, and a good reason, Oakland has been cleaning up homeless camps all over Oakland. So right on the other side of the freeway here used to be a huge homeless camp. And you can see that the homeless camp is all gone. After I peeked in that yard, I'm going, what is that? That must be some kind of junkyard or something. But all where those vehicles are used to be RVs. That used to be all homeless people all the way up and down the road. You can see where they put the blocks. Yeah, but you see that all over Oakland. Those big trash piles like that, you cannot skip that. But all the homeless were gone. So I decided to come back and do one little pass over this neighborhood before I finish this video. But these are the people that are complaining about all the dust and noise that has been on top of their cars every morning when they get up. So they say. Now I have no reason not to believe them, because you cannot do a massive project like this without dust blowing all over the neighborhood houses. The rust and the dust, and you can even see some of those piles are covered up. So that must be toxic dirt, I would imagine. So they'll have to put that on a train to nowhere. But look at all that scrap metal. If you are a scrap man, well, they have it in 2 separate piles. The big ugly metal and the metal they can melt real easy. So, yep, iron and tank iron, I would imagine. I'm sure they got better names for it. But yeah, that's parts of tanks and mechanicals and drums, and the other piles, parts of the building, I would imagine. And you got your brick pile and your dirt piles, and yeah, this place is organized. It's all logistics. They know where to put everything. So on this morning, I did not see what I came for. I thought for sure they would be tugging on that building and big chunks would be falling down before my eyes, but that did not happen. Matter of fact, it was the same thing as what usually happens. A whole bunch of nothing, but that nothing is always something in my eyes. I always like to see them working. But nothing dramatic like I wanted to see, like the big guy pulling that big piece down. But like I said, they can't really do that. Everything has to be slow and deliberate here, so I don't know what I was thinking. Well, you can see they got that inside of that pretty much carved out, and it's ready to fall. So I think that's why they moved to this side. Well, there you go. The glass plant on Memorial Day morning. Memorial Day weekend morning. But just a little PS, I did get back over here in the afternoon, and they did start doing some heavy pulling and stuff. So I did get to see some demolition finally. So stay tuned for that, or not. All right, well, there's your last look on the Oakland Glass Plant Recycling Center number 068 on Memorial Day holiday weekend, the year 2025, the year of our Lord. Yep, I should just give you the right date. It was May 23rd, 2025, the year of our Lord. Well, it doesn't get any uglier than that, but I think it's beautiful to me. I'm glad that this old plant is leaving and finding a new home in a melted furnace somewhere. Alright, well, these videos always tend to run a little long because it's just history in the making. So if you stayed this long, I really want to thank you again, for coming along with me, on these glass plant recycling demolition adventures. Boy, that's a long title. All right, everybody. You know the drill. Peace, love, and all that hippie jazz. Bye-bye, everybody.